Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Fertilizer is important for plants. Today, we're going to show how to do the math to convert recommendations to different kinds of fertilizer. Also, every gardener needs some tools, but which ones do you have to have? That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Peter Richards. Peter's our local gardener, and Joel and Diamond will be joining me later. Hi, Peter.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So I understand we're going to talk about fertilizers, calculations. There's math involved?
Yes, there's math involved.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, but it's not hard math.
It's not hard math. Okay.
Not hard
Well,
math.
it's not
This
hard
is pretty
math.
easy. It's
I think I can get it.
Yeah, not complex algebra or anything like
Okay,
that.
we're good deal.
So,
Good deal.
yeah. So when you're trying to figure out if you need to fertilize your lawn,
Okay.
first thing to do, always soil test.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
get the soil test, find out what your soil really needs.
Okay.
It may turn out it doesn't need nearly as much as you think it does.
That's true.
So there are three major parts of soil analysis, you could say, the three macronutrients. You have nitrogen, you have potassium, and you have phosphorus.
Good.
Nitrogen, often in a soil test, is not tested for
Okay.
because it is very transient in the soil. And by the time you get your soil test results back, the nitrogen is totally different than what you
Yeah,
sent.
that's right. That's right.
So yeah, it comes quickly, it goes quickly.
Yeah.
So
good.
you don't really need to worry about that.
Yeah.
You do need to side dress and give plants nitrogen. That promotes green leaves, but you don't have to worry too much about testing for it. So that leaves you with potassium and phosphorus. And those last a lot longer in the soil. And so that's what you're really concerned about with your soil test, is those two, in addition to pH and some of your micronutrients. But those two are the ones we're really going to talk about.
I would agree.
So let's go back to nitrogen real quick. For nitrogen, to figure out how much nitrogen you need, recommend going to your local extension service and finding out when they recommend that you put nitrogen on this particular plant every year. And you can do that. You can Google, for instance, here in Tennessee. I would Google Tennessee Extension,
There you go.
when to side dress corn,
you
or something like that. And that way I'll get a recommendation from Extension in my state, and that'll come up high on the
You're
results.
exactly right.
Yep. So when you get your soil test back, you have a recommendation that you should put down, let's say, 1 pound of 13-13-13 per 100 square feet. Okay, well, you go check your garage and you find out you don't have any 13-13-13. Instead, you have something else. So what we're going to do is talk about how to convert that into what the recommendation says.
Got it.
So some of the typical fertilizers that you'll find that people will have, you have ammonium nitrate, which is 3400. So the numbers, the first number is nitrogen, then you have then you have phosphorus,
Right.
and then you
There
have
you go.
potassium.
There you go.
Those are the three numbers. So
Okay.
the ammonium nitrate has 34% nitrogen, 0 of the other two.
Got it.
Okay. You have the balanced fertilizers that you can find at your big box stores. So you have 888 or 10-10-10 or 13-13-13. Those are the most common ones that you find. You have equal parts of each. So that means 888, you have 8% nitrogen, 8% potassium, 8% phosphorus.
All right, following that.
So you also have triple superphosphate, which is 0.460.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is all phosphorus, roughly half by weight.
Yeah.
You also have lawn fertilizers. You can use lawn fertilizers. Be very careful if you do that it does not have any herbicides in it.
Yes.
Yes.
That is good. Yeah,
But
exactly
your
right.
typical lawn fertilizer is
that's
about 3004-ish, and depending on which one you get, it could be different.
Yeah.
You also have some organic fertilizers. So you have blood meal is 1310.
Okay.
Bone meal is 3150.
Okay.
And potassium sulfate is 0050.
Wow, 50.
That one may or may not be organic. It depends on the process it was created by.
Okay.
Some are organic and some are not.
Gotcha.
Potassium sulfate.
Gotcha.
So let's get to the math.
Okay. Oh boy.
So let's say that the soil test recommends 1 pound of 10-10-10 per 100 square feet.
Okay.
Okay. But you go to your garage, you find out you only have 13-13-13. Don't go to the store and buy another bag of 10, 10, 10. You don't need to.
Yeah.
We can just do the conversions. So what you do is you do what is recommended divided by what you have.
Okay.
So 13, 13, 13 is what you have. 10, 10, 10 is what was recommended. So you do 10 divided by 13.
Ah.
So instead of 1 pound of 10, 10, 10 in 100 square feet, you put down 0.77 pounds, about 3/4 of a pound, of 13, 13, 13.
Okay.
You get the exact same value, exact same nutrients, and you don't need to go buy another bag of fertilizer. This is going to sit in your garage.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
a little more difficult is if you have the partial fertilizers or the incomplete fertilizers that only have something in one number.
Okay, gotcha.
That happens a lot in the organic fertilizers.
Yeah.
So, for instance, let's take the same thing. It recommends 1 pound of 10, 10, 10 per 100 square feet. And so we need 10 of nitrogen. Well, blood meal is 1310. Okay, so you're going to need 10 divided by 13 pounds of blood meal, and that comes out to 0.77 pounds to have the same amount of nitrogen. You're also going to have just a tiny bit of phosphorus in there because there's a 1.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
So now we need
much,
to add phosphorus to our mixture to get that balanced fertilizer. So we can add bone meal. It is 315.0. So you'll do 10 divided by 15, or 2/3 of a pound, 0.66 pounds, to have the same amount of phosphorus. Now we're going to get a little bit of nitrogen in there as well because there was a 3 in the nitrogen position, but that's probably close enough. You don't really need to worry about the nitrogen being exactly perfect. If you wanted to, you could pull back a little bit on the blood meal and let it be covered by the bone meal.
Gotcha.
But I wouldn't worry about it.
Right.
It's not really enough to matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes that much difference with that.
Yep. So then we're going to use potassium sulfate for the third number. And once again, you're going to have 10 divided by 50. That gives you 0.2 pounds of that. So if you spread that 3/4 of a pound of blood meal, 2/3 of a pound of bone meal, and 0.2 pounds or 1/5 of a pound of the potassium sulfate, you're going to end up with the same as a 10-10-10 fertilizer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. And that's all organic.
It's organic.
Just
Okay.
requires a little bit of mixing in there.
Just a little bit more. Okay.
Yep. So the potassium especially stays in the soil for a very, very, very long time. There's lots of potassium in the soil, and it actually gets there because there's a lot of potassium that plants can't use that is in the soil. As the soil slowly gets weathered and you have some microbial action, that potassium becomes available to the plant. So don't go dumping potassium out on your ground unless you do a soil test.
Right. Highly recommended.
Yes, and when the soil test, if you get it through an extension service or some private labs, they will have recommendations. They'll say, put out this much for 2 years or for 3 years. And then at that point you want to retest because you may have sufficient at that point. You don't want too much. If you start to get too much, your plants start doing weird things.
Yes.
And you can't get it out of the soil.
That's the key thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't get it out if you put too much in. Yeah.
Yep.
That's key.
Yep.
Okay.
So for mid-season fertilizers, you got to side dress. So it's going to be, a lot of times those recommendations are going to be 3400.
Yeah.
Put out, 2 pounds of 3400 per 100 foot a row, or whatever it is. Once again, you can do the same math. It is what is recommended divided by what you have. And so you can use blood meal for that. You can use 3400. You could do 3004, which is your lawn fertilizer. Once again, make sure it doesn't contain any pesticides or herbicides in it.
Yes.
So that is how you do the math to get from the recommendation to what you have, or from the recommendation to your organic fertilizers.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to follow.
Yeah, it's not too hard. Just remember, yes, it is recommended divided by what you have. Yeah.
That's easy to follow, Peter.
Yep.
That's pretty good. So even I can do that calculation. That's pretty good. So thank you, Peter. We appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
This is mouse ear chickweed. It is a winter annual weed. It reproduces by seed, like soils that are high in nitrogen. And here's another valuable thing about chickweed to most. It is edible, so you can definitely eat mouse ear chickweed. If you want to get rid of it, if it's moist, you can easily just pull it up, or you can just use a broadleaf weed herbicide. Please read and follow the label. Hi, Miss Joellen. Spring is almost here, right?
Yes.
Folks are itching to get out into the garden,
Right.
but they need good gardening tools, right?
Yeah, there is a array of gardening tools that I use all the time.
Okay.
And we're just going to go over some of them today.
Sure.
If that's okay.
That's fine.
And
That's just fine.
the number one garden tool that I use all the time are
Yes.
these hand pruners.
I would agree.
And there's so many things you can do with these hand pruners. I mean, I keep them with me almost all the time when I'm out in the garden. There are all kinds and they're all good, but the best thing I can tell you is make sure that they are scissor action ones.
Right.
Where they bypass, this blade passes this other blade. That's the scissor action ones are the best. They last the longest. Some of the others that are anvil don't last as long. But these, no matter how inexpensive or expensive they all work the same and they all work well.
Yes.
And if you've noticed, since it's the beginning of the year, I have already cleaned and sharpened all of my tools.
You did a good
for the
job.
winter,
They look good.
including the wood parts have linseed oil on them. So everything is ready for the spring.
Mr. D would be so proud of you.
Yeah. he would. The other thing I use all the time are gloves.
Yes.
There's so many things that are sharp out there. I just have gotten comfortable wearing gloves, and if you use gloves enough, you will be comfortable wearing gloves.
True statement.
There. So now these, besides cutting things up to stems up to about 3/4 of an inch, if you need something a little larger than that, then you're going to go with these called loppers. And they give you more leverage, and they've got a bigger blade on them, and you can cut stems up to 2 inches with these. So anywhere from 1 to 2 inches cuts with the loppers. If you need anything any larger than that, I would suggest the hand pruning saw. And I like the ones that have a retractable blade because these are very sharp. And what's good about these is they're not like a regular saw. They cut on the pull.
Ah.
So, and they cut this particular one with this double serrated edge it cuts really fast on the pull, almost like butter through like up to maybe 3.5, 4 inch limb.
Okay.
But I wouldn't do anything any larger than that.
Okay.
About 3 inches is average that I use this for.
But cutting on the pull is
Cutting
good,
on the
though.
pull
Yes.
because it's not like a saw, but it cuts more on the pull, so you're pulling it back to cut it.
That's good.
That's what's different about this type of saw compared to regular saw. Another thing that I use a lot for planting seeds is this claw. Sometimes weeding, if you've got some small weeds, it's easy just to scratch the ground and get the weeds out.
Okay.
Also, when you're planting seed beds like lettuce and radishes, onions,
Good
small
example.
seeds, you get a good, you can rough up the ground and get a nice seed bed for the seeds to be planted. So I use that.
Okay.
Trowel. Oh, this is one other one that I use a whole lot for a lot of things. Now, I like the narrow. There are wider blades.
Yeah,
I like
I
the
have one of
narrow
those.
blades. I think this part of the country with the soils we have, this one seems to, get into the soil and able to work easier to make a hole to plant, small plants with this one. I also will weed with it.
All right.
Then you can just sit and cut around the ground and get the weeds
the
up.
little shallow weeds, yeah.
I use it a lot for a lot of different things like that. And then there's something like this. It's called the pruning fork. Dividing plants is the number one thing I use, and digging up bulbs like tulips that are done for the year.
Okay.
That's what I use that for.
Could you use that for a compost pile?
Yes, and turning compost.
Yeah.
I do. See, I compost on the ground, so
Oh, okay,
I don't
I
have
got you.
piles, but that's
you
what I
could,
would
okay.
use for that too. Next is one that a lot of people don't know about, and it's a triangular shaped hoe, and it's called a Moro hoe. Again, it's good for weeding, but it's really good at making edges on beds. Like if you got a sidewalk and you've got a planting bed next to it, it makes a nice edge so that you can put mulch down to the sidewalk so that the soil won't keep running out onto your sidewalk. I use it a lot for that, and I also use it in the garden when I make my rows for planting my corns or my beans, I just roll this down and I just
can see
set
that and drop
seeds
the
in, and then
seeds. Okay.
and you just take it and you just cover it back up. It makes it real easy to plant rows of seeds in the garden. So I'd use it for that. Next is a small shovel. And after the transplant trowel, I mean, if the plant is like a quart or a gallon size, so it's a little bit bigger, I will use this to plant those plants. So it's just a little bit small plants.
Okay.
Gallon size and below. It was good for that. Then, of course, if you've got landscape shrubs and trees, you're going to need and so do some heavy, like we've used this out front to trim up the amendments for our bed. So that's when I use the larger shovel for. And of course, then next is the leaf rake. And you know, I use it not only to get debris out of the way, leaves, I also disseminate
The
mulch,
mulch.
if you watched me with that. So it's very versatile and, you know, cleaning up the yard with anything. I like the leaf rake. And of course, then there is the garden rake. And this is to move like rocks and mulch and dirt in large quantities.
Okay.
The leaf rake will just kind of go over the top of it and it gets small debris, but the garden rake gets larger debris, larger soil, larger rocks, and
just
you can
move it
really do
around.
some
Yeah.
moving with it. And I probably use it the least, but I still, you know, when you need to move something, you really need it. So I've always had one and have used it. And of course, the last thing you need is a broom.
It's a good broom.
It's a good broom,
Yeah.
because you should always clean up after yourself. So those are the ones if I use all the time. These are the ones that if you're starting out, these would be good tools for you to have for your garden.
And they can purchase these tools?
These are found everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. There's nothing new, you know, and revolutionary here. Now there are a lot of specialized tools.
Yeah.
I use these. You find them anywhere. I haven't found anything else that I like more than what I already have. So I've been using these.
And they look good. I mean, you cleaned them up real good.
I did.
But again, if you had to use one tool, what would that one tool be? If you just had to have one,
I would move my hand pruners because they do just so much.
Right.
And
And,
in the garden, in
being
the
agents,
landscape.
you know, we have to have that because we stop on side of the road and prune
yes.
things for demonstrations and
Yeah, we do.
you know, and such. So
But yeah,
agree
I
with that.
like my hand pruners. Actually, the hand pruners was probably the first one I had for myself when I was starting out. So, and I've gathered all of these over the years and inherited some of them. So.
Okay. And it's always good to, you know, clean the handles off too, so you don't get splinters.
Yeah,
and
and
those type of things.
And one thing is, like with the crepe myrtle bark scale now, if you're pruning with any of this on your with the crepe myrtle bark scale, you want to disinfect that because you don't want to transfer that to another crepe myrtle that doesn't have it. And if you have to cut and dig up diseased plants, it would be best if you put a little rubbing alcohol or a little bleach water or something on them to disinfect it so you don't move diseases and or bugs in your own yard.
Good point. Glad you brought that up. All right, we appreciate that. That was good. We know these are your tools that
These
you
are
use.
mine. These are mine.
Good deal. Thank you, Ms. Joel. I appreciate that.
These are some snapdragons that I am going to move up because they've been in these little seed trays for about 8 weeks. And so what I do is I take a little bamboo. You can use a pencil eraser, anything that will help push that plug up. And what I do is kind of squeeze the cell a little, telling it it's time to come out. And then I just push, there's a hole in the bottom. So I just push the plug up, squeeze the bottom so he doesn't fall back in there, and then I pull him out. And this is what I'm going to plant. This is my potting mix. Fill the pot about halfway, but I'm just going to take this little plug, and this is a single stem so I can bury it fairly deep. So I just put him back in there and I backfill. And I kind of tap it around, and that one is ready to go. We'll water it after, always water after you up pot.
All right, here's our Q&A segment. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
All right, these are some great questions. Here's our first viewer email. How do I get rid of weed vines without putting down massive chemicals? And this is Jennifer in Memphis, Tennessee. She says she has all sorts of vines in her backyard. Listen to this: ivy, trumpet vine, morning glory, and honeysuckle. Those are some tough vines. Those are tough. So Joseph, she wants to control these without using massive chemicals. What do you think?
You have to dig them out.
Okay.
Dig them out and get as many of the roots out as you possibly can. And just, understand that you probably could still have some more coming up.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an ongoing process.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, wear your gloves, get some pants, long sleeve shirt, proper PPE, because you're gonna be doing a lot of pulling if you're not gonna be using chemicals.
Yeah, a lot of pulling.
Right.
For sure.
Peter, anything to add?
Well, if you just don't want to spray everything and you're okay with using some chemicals, you can cut them to the ground and then just dab some glyphosate or Roundup on the cut end. That'll help speed the process.
It will.
And it's very targeted, so it's not going to get everything else.
Right. That's another way to do it, for sure. There's going to be a lot of work either way you look at it. And then something too I like to add, you can try to mow it down, if at all possible. You can get a lawnmower and then just try to mow it down as much as you can. But if you're not going to be using massive chemicals, then a lot of pulling and then the dab technique, something that you're going to be doing. Yeah. All right, Jennifer.
Eventually you'll win.
Yeah. Good luck to you. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work, but thank you for that question. We appreciate that. Here's our next viewer email. I noticed this leaf as I was raking the outdoor area of my home. What causes this? And this is Sandra from Brownsville, Tennessee. Miss Sandra, thank you for that picture. It's a nice picture. So what do you think, Joseph? What causes that we saw on the leaves?
So these are just galls.
Just galls.
Yeah, just galls. It's not going to do any damage. Galls are, can be made by fungus or diseases, insects, even mites, but they're harmless. It's not going to do anything.
Right, so you don't have to worry about trying to get a chemical out or anything like that?
No chemicals, nothing cultural either. Just, it's going to be what it's going to be, and it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to bother anything.
Okay, Peter?
Yeah.
Anything to add?
The galls, a lot of times they're made by insects. These are the galls in this particular picture is probably made by an insect. Hard to tell which one, there's so many of them. Yeah. But a lot of the insects that make galls are actually beneficial. And so what they do is they come in and they chew on the leaf a little bit, or they lay an egg there. And the hatching larva chews on the leaf, and its saliva makes the leaf do something weird. Yeah. So it causes a growth, and then the insect develops inside the growth. Yeah. And so obviously insecticides can't get to it.
That's right.
But you can have centipede wasps, which are very beneficial in the garden. They make galls. That's right. You have erified mites, not so beneficial, but they make galls as well. Jumping plant lice or psyllids. Aphids, some can make galls as well. And there's a really cool gall that I have come across that is the willow pinecone gall.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, and it's, it's amazing what nature can do, but this
it is, isn't it?
But it looks just like a pine cone attached to a willow tree, and willows don't have pine cones. But it's created by that insect, and the reaction of the tree to the insect creates this thing that looks like a pine cone.
I think that is so neat.
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah. It's just one of nature's oddities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just admire it. I think it'll be all right, Miss Sandra.
No, they're really cool. Some of the shapes.
I think they are cool, but the insects, the mice, also viruses. Viruses can cause galls, fungi, bacteria. Yeah, just enjoy it. I think it's fun. But thank you for that picture. It's pretty good. All right, here's our next viewer email. My euonymus bushes have been healthy until last summer. They look ashen in color and are dropping leaves. What is going on? And this is Teresa from Dayton, Ohio. She says she has seen what might be little white bugs on the bottoms of the leaves. So what do you think about that, Peter? Little white?
Well, that sounds like what happened at my house a few years ago.
It happened at mine.
Yeah. No, that's euonymus scale.
Oh yeah.
There's when the scale is named for the plant, it likes it. But that's what it is. They live on the bottom of the leaves. They suck the sap out of the plant, so they're sucking the life out of it, essentially. And it makes at first it starts out, you have a green leaf, and then when they get on there, you get little white dot on top of where they're sucking on the bottom. And then eventually the leaf starts to, it starts looking really sick, yellow, ashen, like she said. So the way that I fix the problem is I used an imidacloprid drench.
Okay.
And I drenched around the plants. It doesn't work overnight,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
but within a couple months, it took care of the problem. I did that, I don't know, it was probably 5 years ago, and they haven't come back yet. So, you know, they're not just going to appear. Something needs to move them there. So it could be a bird, it could be something else has moved them to the plant. And so until something else moves euonymus scale to your plant, it'll be fine. Luckily on my plant, it hasn't happened again yet.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, read and follow the label on that product.
Yes.
Anything you want to add, Joseph?
Yeah, make sure they're getting plenty of water.
Yeah.
And nutrients, you know. Make sure it's getting the organic material that it needs, fertilizer. That'll help, you know, defend off different stresses like the scale.
Yeah, yeah, because usually when you have insect problems, it's due to stress.
Stress.
You know, some type of stress.
Right.
So I had the same issue as well. So Peter, you know, pretty much talked about is what you can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the white bugs will be the male scales. The female scales look like oysters, right? And they can do a lot of damage. They can actually make the leaves drop off the shrub, right? So I remember one thing Felder Worsham always told me. So Felder would always say, beware of plants that have pests named after them. Euonymus scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you have it, Miss Teresa. So good luck with that, all right? So, Peter, Joseph, thank you much. That was fun.
Thank you.
That's fun. Thank you very much. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to review Peter's fertilizer calculations or learn more about gardening tools, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.